Hello, and welcome to YWCA's Facebook Connect, Heal, Learn speaker series. I'm Laura Gomez-Horton, Clinical Director of YWCA Greater Austin. For those who are unfamiliar, YWCA Greater Austin provides individual, couple, family, and group therapy, care coordination services, life skills classes, school-based services, consultation, training, and advocacy. Our mission is to eliminate racism, empower women, stand up for social justice, help families, and strengthen communities, which we've been doing in the Central Texas area for over 116 years. We truly stand at the intersection of mental health and social justice. This speaker series focuses on inviting subject matter experts to discuss topics connected to mental wellness and social justice. As many people are preparing to go back to school this month, and some may have already, we'll be bringing awareness to a variety of aspects associated with going back to school. As we know, this can be both an exciting time or a torturous time as people anticipate starting school, not just for the students, but families, teachers, administrators, and others affected by this. Today, we are joined by some of our staff. I'd like to introduce Annie Wells, our Development Director, and Heather Nicole, our Care Coordination Manager. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Before we begin, could you each just tell us a little bit about yourself and your connection to YWCA?
I'll go first. Okay. Yes, just like Laura said, I'm Annie. I'm the Director of Development. I've been with YWCA Greater Austin for about 2 years. I've been in nonprofit for about 15. I was attracted to working with YWCA because of the mission and its alignment with my own lived experience and my hopes that Texas can become a better place for women and children to live. I really care about this topic, and I'm so happy to be invited today. Thank you.
Welcome, Annie. Heather?
I'm Heather, and I work with care coordination, otherwise known as case management. And I'm happy to be here also. I've been here almost 8 years with the YWCA, looking forward to many more, and really love the idea of working in a place that when the day is over, that I can feel good about myself and what I do and how I pay it forward and help others.
And I see that you're ready with your background there, Heather, ready to go on this topic. So we'll just jump right into it. I wanted to really talk about this going back to school because as we know, this can be a really exciting time, or it could be so anxiety provoking for people. And I think we forget that piece. I think we talk about back to school sales and things like that and getting, new clothes or shoes or whatever to get prepared or new classes, but we forget about the anxiety that comes along with that. Or for some people who do not have a good experience at school, it's a reminder that they're going back to an unsupportive environment. So I want to give weight to both those things. And so I'd like to start first with talking a little bit with you all about some of the things that you remember in your experience when you were younger and going back to school. And it could be any age, any grade, just whatever pops into your mind.
I'll go first this time. I loved school so much. It was the place where I could do or be whatever. I had a lot of support from my teachers. I think things change as you grow up. That whole puberty thing happens and you get more self-conscious and cliques start to be more of a thing. And so high school would definitely be working its way to the opposite, when worried about not the school, like the academic part, but the social piece. And being very self-conscious, being in puberty and worried about what other people think. And then the cliques of the cool kids, the nerds, the jocks, all that stuff, like where do I fit in? And if we're lucky, we have at least a bestie or a small group of friends that help us navigate and make it through.
Yeah, I love that. I will say I loved learning. I still love learning. I think I'm a lifetime learner. You know, if there's like a badge I can get to wear, lifetime learner, that's me. I think a lot of us at YWCA would say that about ourselves. I think the learning aspect of school always delighted me. I came from a family of really hard workers, and we were really, you know, we worked the land, we worked the farm, we worked, you know, outside, and we had really beautiful philosophical conversations in my family, but there wasn't a lot of focus on reading or learning the skills outside of what were necessary to survive in our community. So when I first got a hold, I think I was in third grade, and I got a hold of just like any book. It was the Scholastic Book Fair, if y'all remember those.
Mhm.
And you could have any book you wanted. And my mind was blown. And I still have the first book, actually right here, the first book that I got in my Scholastic Book Fair. It really changed my perspective. And I think I began like really celebrating all the things you could have access to in a school environment. There was also, you know, some anxiety, I think, around that when we're talking about the Scholastic Book Fair. It's a positive memory for me, but I also remember the anxiety of knowing I had to ask for money to participate in it, and knowing that money was tight. And even as a third grader, knowing that I felt maybe like some shame around, is it okay to ask for money for this thing for myself if it's not for the whole family? And so I think that's probably like the theme of school for me growing up, was so excited. But then, you know, Heather was mentioning in high school, I remember when like the white Nike shoe was the thing you had to have to be the cool kid. And I remember researching it and finding out that it cost $80 and then going, well, that's never going to happen. And struggling with that night after night, talking to the family, how was your day? And just really wanting that one thing. And ultimately, you know, we went to Payless and we got the knockoff, and I was made fun of at school for having the knockoff. Yeah, and it's like those moments where it could have been such a cool, safe, awesome, exciting place, but then the anxiety of living in a family that struggled off and on, living below the poverty line, and just, you know, wanting to be a part of it more, but not being able to access the things that made you cool in school. I don't know.
I had knockoff kids in
Yeah.
junior high. I remember the knockoffs. Mhm.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I could talk about that forever, but you know, all the little things. We just wrapped up the summer camp at YWCA, and it was free, completely free, no cost to families, 4th grade through 8th grade. And I was really happy that it was successful, of course, but I think for me, working the check-in and checkout table every day, the parents were just like, thank you so much for this. Thank you for not charging. Thank you for teaching social emotional learning to our child. Thank you for letting them be who they are. Thank you for knowing that neurodivergence needs special treatment. Thank you for being trauma informed, you know. And I was just like, wow, they are so hungry for that level of experience in their schools that even just a half-day, 1 week-long program really effectively changed how they felt about their child getting education. And I think probably my biggest gratitude moment was all the programs that my mom did access, and all the people that I was exposed to growing up that really did hold us in a safe place. I think without social services, I would be a really different person with different level of education today. And so I'm really proud of what we were able to offer the community. And I think it's really needed, especially in Central Texas. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of speaks to a little bit what Heather had mentioned. You know, it may serve as a safe haven for some people. That may be the only place that they get a meal, or where they connect with friends, or they connect with a safe adult. But at the same time, grappling with all these other circumstances like social cliques and financial needs. I know I often hear, still to this day, of course, you know, how kids are, you know, they can't afford the school lunch meal, and then it gets taken away from them, and they're shamed, not on purpose shamed, but indirectly shamed, as they get the free sandwich that the schools give them instead. And so there is that shame that comes with that for kids, whether it's been known to them or not. That's something the kids around them notice, regardless of the age. So kind of going into that, based on your experiences, your conversations with other people, the people that you work with, what are some things that you hear today that kids are working through, either, again, the excitement of it or the challenges that come with starting a new school year? And I'm thinking here more about the youth, so, and again, any grade levels that you're familiar with.
I mean, I'll go back to the summer camp that we just wrapped up.
Yeah.
We had a lot of conversations with access to school supplies.
Mhm.
While the kiddos were with us, the parents were out trying to find deals for school supplies. And, one little girl said really sweetly, like, "Oh, it's okay, I'll just share," with her sibling who is in a different grade. So we know that doesn't work, but it was really precious that she just thought, well, we can just share this like one pencil. We can just share this one pen. And I don't know if this is everyone in every ISD's experience, but I will say the school lists are getting much longer, much more detailed. The requirements of everything you need to have by the first day is a really big price ticket to buy it all at once and have it already. And if you have more than one child, which I think the average Texas family right now is 2.5 kids. So it's like at least all of those numbers are doubled.
Mhm.
And so it's a lot.
Mhm.
Heather, I don't want to out you as a mom, but you have a school age kiddo.
Well, I mean, high school and junior high are different from elementary. I first going there. So yes, for elementary and middle school with a really big list, but as the kids progress to the higher levels, they get Chromebooks, everything's online, which is another challenge in and of itself, especially when kids don't have connections to internet at home. Although they try to provide what the kids need, they don't have books anymore. And I don't know how I feel about that being older. I feel like there's a value in having an actual tangible. As far as like other stuff, actually more what comes to mind is trying to imagine what it feels like to go to school in such a technological age. But the dark side as well, which is kids bullying in different ways. So, kids not wanting to go to the bathroom because bullies are there, and like they always have been, but with their phone ready to record and then putting it on social media. And so before, if bullying ended when the school day ended, it doesn't stop once it's online, right? It's always there. So that's other stuff beyond the I need food, I need school supplies. There are other needs that, because a lot of schools are understaffed, and then they just have basically, placeholders, warming seats, substitutes, they're not getting the things that they need. They don't have staff in other ways. I know that they just did some stuff in the legislation about adding some security, but that it was talked about, I can't remember if it was NPR or Texas Tribune or something, where it's not even like the amount is a joke. It's like it was less than $100, I think, per kid or something, or less. But they don't have the ability to be everywhere, and you can't have cameras in the bathroom. Doesn't make sense. Just moving in an environment where everything you do, it can be like caught on camera on your phone. And what does that mean if you're already teenager and you're already very self-conscious and you're developing your identity and you're already thinking like, where do I fit in the world? Like, how does that really impact kids' development? Does it stunt it? Do they, I don't know. I just, those kind of things come to my mind when I think about kids going to school right now.
Absolutely. I'm thinking also, you're talking about safety in schools, and a really big conversation this time last year that's still continuing in the hearts and minds of parents as they return to school is these school shootings. Is my child going to be safe? I have a cousin who posted a picture of her child on the first day of school and said, making sure I know what he's wearing in case the emergency happens and I have to go and find him in a crowd, or I have to describe him to someone in a mass shooting situation. And I don't have children, and I can't even personally I have no idea what that fear feels like, but it makes me so sad as a family member to know that that's now another layer of anxiety and stress for so many families. And this is all over the nation, obviously, but I do think in Texas, gun reform and gun laws are a hot topic, because we are, I guess, historically a gun-loving state. And I hope as a 7th generation Texan that I can continue to encourage other Texans to know that reform doesn't mean lack of access. It just means safety guidelines to keep our kiddos safe. But yeah, that's so scary.
Yeah, that's very scary that's the thought at the forefront of a lot of parents' minds, I think, is, the fear that something's going to happen to their child, to their youth, to their family members. You all mentioned so many different things that I'm thinking of, like that we can go into and rabbit hole into and dig deeper. But I think Heather mentioned a lot of things that probably as a parent, she's kind of thinking about also, but also a lot of other parents are thinking about, that kids are dealing with, with the social media. And there's also, fentanyl is still a big deal here in this area. So drugs, alcohol, just so many different things. And I know that growing up, we dealt with the peer pressures also and things like that, but it is different. And the way of dealing with it also is different. Sometimes school systems are so much more punitive, at least from what I remember, and it sets the kids up for failing, basically. When there's a new legislation proposed about if you get caught with a vaping item and the kids get sent away to the alternative learning school for a certain amount of time. It's like, that's loss of learning, that's loss of connections with other students. And so
it also feels like it's part of a prison pipeline, really, right? You're different, you have a coping mechanism, or you have a learned behavior, or whatever the reason is. So we're going to put you in this place with other people that we also have deemed socially bad. And now you're going to have to learn in a system that's completely isolated. My mother worked at an alternative learning center when I was growing up, and we had a lot of conversations around that. And then you also have to think of, like, are those school systems attracting the high quality educators that they need to help potentially turn around or positively affect some kids who may be struggling? And the answer is maybe no. And I also know of a couple of teachers that started really passionately their young careers, and after 1 year have completely said, I will never go into a classroom in Texas again. And I wonder what we're doing to protect that level of our education system as well. If you go to college and you get your certification and you're excited to make positive change, you work in a low-income community because that's where your heart tells you to serve. And then after 1 year, they completely burn you out. So much that you don't want to return to teaching at all. And you're choosing a coffee shop job again instead, right?
Yeah. And you would wonder, like, what it is that is driving that piece. Is it the lack of support? Is it the lack of resources? Is it just the environment in of itself that, we've been in this pandemic phase and we're expected to go back to, what we knew before. And it's like, people are still really heightened in their emotions. And it's like, let's throw 30 kids in one room together and have one teacher or substitute, like Heather said, in order to fill those voids, you bring in a substitute. So I wonder, I can't necessarily say this is the issue. I think there's many things that are,
all of
yeah,
those
there's a
things
lot
you
of
just
different
listed
things.
and more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're talking a lot about kids' experiences, and something that also came up over the last 2 weeks at our summer camp was, so that's like a normal, do we say neuronormal, or what, how do we?
Neurotypical.
Thank you, neurotypical child's experience. But then what about neurodivergent children? What about special needs children? Another person that I was talking to was expressing anxiety. She has an older child who's returning to school, who's neurodivergent, who's definitely special needs, who needs more support. And she was like, I'm excited to have him back in a learning environment and not just like at home, but I'm also terrified of what his experience is going to be. It hasn't always been positive. There haven't been programs to support his success. And then her next fear was, what happens after he graduates? Then what do I do? And the truth is, there's not a clear path for success for him in our communities as they are.
Yeah.
And I sound like I'm saying a lot of negative things, but there's a lot of excitement about returning to school. I think I worry as a former educator, because I ran schools and I taught. I worry that even if we get them there and they get their school supplies and they have their food taken care of and they have a teacher who cares about them and all of that happens, what is the teacher allowed to teach them? Because as we know in Texas, with critical race theory and book banning being active aspects of our educational system, that they're not even getting access to the full story. We're not even allowed to tell the story of Texas in a real way anymore. And again, I'm 7th generation, and I think there's a lot to learn from our history and a lot to celebrate, but a lot to learn from. And now that's not even allowed legally to be taught.
Yeah. Which goes back to that punitive state, it's like, what, it's that saying, knowledge is power, right? But ironically, the people in power are the ones that are keeping the knowledge from funneling through to everybody else, which to me seems to say that if you keep people without the knowledge, then the people in power keep the power. So it's a cyclical thing, obviously.
Absolutely.
That's why. And you talk about book bans, you talk about this, well, like book bans, for example, and also being told like you can't teach this, you can't teach that, to me is also a way of controlling information. You control information, and it's being put out there as through fear. You scare the people and tell them certain things. You throw out a lot of rhetoric to scare people. And if they don't get scared, then you threaten to punish them by making it a crime.
I mean, you're describing systemic oppression.
Of course, yes, of course.
Like that's what we're in. We're in a very specific strategic systemic oppression meant to hold down the people who are coming up, the next generation of leaders.
Yeah. So so let's go back to some of the fun things. No. Well, let me ask this instead. So what's YWCA doing? One, to, if we do see the systemic oppression happening, are we doing anything to put that information out there, to create some of that knowledge, to change some of those systems? We'll start there.
I think more boots on the ground in meeting people's basic needs where I lived at the YWCA. I think that a lot of things that we're talking about, don't really, most people aren't worried about it until it's in their backyard affecting them personally or someone that they know or love. And most people are just trying to get by and make ends meet. And that's kind of where care coordination lives, and connecting folks to tangibles and community resources and food and help with electricity bills, you know, connecting them to those resources, and giving them other things like life skills, helping them budget what money they do have, for example, finding ways to fill those gaps. So whether that's a food pantry or finding them access to gift cards to HEB, and those kinds of things. So there, all those things you're talking about, they're there, but I don't think it's, I mean, people just want to survive, and they're not going to much higher thought processes because they might be working 2 or 3 jobs, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where my mind lives.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about the hierarchy of need, right,
Yep.
we have to have our physical needs met before we can explore the emotional things that are going on for us. We have to have those kind of like supported through mental health access, right? Support groups, knowing you're not alone in your experience before we can allow ourselves to go to an intellectual place. And I think in that intellectual level is where these other issues come into play. Like, how can I fight for the rights? How can I show up? But you're right. If we don't have our physical needs met, we can't. If I'm struggling to have 2 jobs just to feed my children a very like simple meal, I can't sign up for the PTA meeting to have my voice heard, right? And I think for me, that's something that makes me really proud to be part of YWCA, is that wherever you are as a community member, if you're working on basic needs, we've got you. If you're working on the mental health piece, we've got you. If you do want to like kind of step into an advocacy role for your community or yourself or your children, we have a way for you to do that. And I think you can go back and forth too. This week is a good week for advocacy, then come on, we've got something going on. If this week is more of a focus on let's make sure rent is paid, okay, let's go there. And all of that, you know, the mental health access that we offer. And I think especially the support groups, from my perspective, I think when we talk about systemic oppression or making systemic change, and we realize that so many people in the same area are having the same issue, then we know that that's an identified systemic issue in that area, and then we can help elevate that. So even if the part of them is just getting one-on-one mental health, we're able to use things like data analysis to help identify trends in our city, and then to meet the needs as they're happening, and hopefully even before they're happening. The list of what we do is long. I would say go to the website, and there's so many things there. An easy access point too for anybody listening today is if you do have social media, we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And that is so much of a part of how we're just daily communicating what's going on. So it's an easy way to tap in. And then people can always also call us and just say, this is what's going on today. And then our wonderful intake specialists will help them kind of guide towards, is it a care coordination issue? Is it a mental health issue? Is it both? Is it?
Well, and remember, we also have that warm line to let people just kind of, man, I need to talk to somebody. I need to feel connected. I need to feel heard. As opposed to a hotline where you're in crisis. Like sometimes we just need that listening ear. And that's a very important differentiation and offering than other organizations might be offering. All too many times we feel very disconnected and alone. And I think the warm line provides a more immediate opportunity to have our voices heard and make a connection to someone on the other line.
Absolutely. And, you know, we also have really strong partnerships in the community. And so if we can't meet the need, likely we have the relationship with the person who can. And I love that we practice warm handoffs. So a lot of the work we can do is also, if we don't have that thing, let us connect you to the person who has that thing, and let us stay with you until you feel connected. And then, you know, I just want to do a shout out to Blue Cross Blue Shield. They came forward in a big way with us for a backpack drive, and we're getting something like 1,100 backpacks to make sure that are going to kids who don't have the resources to have that yet. So if you're listening to this and you need school supplies or backpack assistance, please reach out to us so we can help you. And thank you, Blue Cross Blue Shield, for allowing us to be able to say that.
Definitely. And I think a lot of times also, as y'all were saying, as people are trying to meet all these different needs, sometimes it's just not knowing how to navigate those systems. I mean, I think that personally, I'm fairly aware and things like that, yet it's still a challenge to figure out how do you navigate this new school system? Who is the person to go talk to? Can I even go talk to them? Do they have time to respond to an
Do they
email?
speak my
Yeah.
first language?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, so lots of things. And I think the most important thing to do is, again, connect with somebody. Because people are everybody's trying to work through all this. So as we're getting ready to kind of close up this conversation, and hopefully we touched on a lot of the things that we wanted to touch on, but I wanted to just kind of openly ask if there's any last parting words that you all would like to share about going back to school, or anything that may be coming up, events, excitements, whatever.
I just want to say that you're not alone. And if you need us, we're here, and in so many ways, the ways that we've talked about, from the warm line to mental health counseling, care coordination, connecting you with community resources, offering you up life skills. I mean, we have so many things. And I mean, that's why we're here. We've been here for this long. We want to be here.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Heather. You're not alone. If you're watching this, you're not alone. If you're experiencing something challenging, you're not alone. And it's not your fault, right? If you're in a situation, it's not your fault, especially when we're talking about the systemic issues that are going on in our state right now. So please reach out today. We will help you.
And real quickly, I don't want to go unmentioned, but Annie mentioned all the groups that we have, and we do have groups for teacher support as well, because we do understand that the teachers and administrators are under a lot of stress and a lot of pressure as well. So that way the students and the teachers and the administration and the families can work together and heal together and be present for each other to be able to connect in a healthy way and in a good learning environment. Well, thank you both so much for joining me and sharing the amazing work that you're both doing. And of course, we want to keep the conversation going as well. And if you want to, like Annie and Heather said, please connect with us in any way, shape, or form that you can. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.